I'm going to share with y'all some easy recipes for canning for the fall. I've got a chili, a chicken soup, baked beans, apple pie filling, and beef stew. All the shelf-stable recipes you're going to need for fall. So you can make all these different recipes. You can make chili beans, taco soup, nachos with the chili to get ready for football season. You can make that chicken soup on a cold day, add some extra chicken and veggies and a side, and that's so delicious. You could get that beef stew, add some cornbread, and you got a delicious meal during the cold weather. With that apple pie filling, you can make an apple pie, apple fritters, and apple dumplings, especially while you're in apple picking season, which is right now. So these recipes are really easy and just made for fall. They're not hard at all. They're really simple, and they're perfect cozy recipes. Alright, today we're going to make chili, and this is in the New Ball Blue Book on page 133. You're going to take 5 pounds of ground beef, and you're going to brown that, and then you want to rinse it off really well, get all that fat off of it, and you're going to put that back in the pot and add 2 cups of chopped onions, about 3 to 4 medium, and then you're going to finely mince some garlic and put that in the pan, and you could also add in a red chili pepper if you want it really spicy. And then you're just going to cook that until the onions are tender, and then you're going to add in 6 cups of canned diced tomatoes with the juice. And then you're going to add in your spices, and that's going to be a half a cup of chili powder, 1.5 tablespoons of salt, and you're going to also add in 1 teaspoon of cumin seeds, but I just added in the cumin, I didn't add in the seeds. So you're going to mix that together, and then you're going to simmer that for about 20 minutes until all those flavors meld together, and that's it. Now it's time to can it, and we're going to pressure can this in our pressure canner. My jars are clean, they're in the water, and I'm going to get ready and put my chili in the jars. Alright, I'm going to ladle my chili into the hot jars, and this is such a great recipe, and you can do so many things with this chili. You can make chili cheese fries, pour it over nachos, make some chili dogs, put it in some mac and cheese. You could put it in a quesadilla, tacos. You could make a chili stuffed baked potato and even make it into taco soup. I mean, this is a great recipe to start out with. There's so many things you can do with it. Especially if you're having like a party or a Super Bowl party, this is great to have on your shelf. Heat it up and just use it in whatever kind of recipe you like, what I had listed. Just so many things you can do with it, and it's really an easy recipe to start out with, especially if you're new to pressure canning. And I'm also canning up some beans, so I'm even going to have my whole canner full. I'm going to stack the chili on top with the black beans, and I'll have that canning recipe out to you soon. So now I'm just going to take my tool and get all of the air bubbles out. I'm going to check my head space, and then I'm going to wipe the rim of the jar really good. You could use vinegar. I just use water and a wet paper towel, and then we'll put the lid and ring on. And that is a 1-inch headspace. So now I'm just going to fill up all the jars and put them in the canner. And these will pressure cook for 75 minutes. If you're using quarts, that'll be 90 minutes. So after the time is up, I'm going to take my jars and let them sit for 12 to 24 hours. And if they are sealed, then I can put them on my shelf. You don't know how many times having canned foods on my shelf has saved me from going to the fast food restaurant. It's just so convenient to have, and you can make so many different things out of it. And it also saves you money. If you find a great ground beef sale, you can make this and have a bunch on your shelf for at least a year. It gives you a full recipe in the books, but you can also get the half recipe on the website. I will have all that information linked down below in the description box. You're just going to need chicken, you're going to need carrot, celery, the chicken broth, and onion. Some bouillon cubes are optional, and just you're going to salt and pepper it to taste. And I will have all the information linked down below in the description box, and also about the giveaway. So let's go ahead and start getting this recipe put together. I have my jars washed in hot soapy water, my rings, my lids. I have got my canner ready, and I've got 12 cups of water in here per the directions for my canner. Yours might be different. And I've got my rack in there, so I'm going to go ahead and start heating up the water. I'll fill the jars with that water, and that way they will sit there and they won't fall over as the water starts heating up. So go ahead and put your jars in there, and you might want to wash a few extra just in case you need more jars. That happens a lot. So let me go ahead and get all my jars in here, and then I will go to the next step. I'm using fresh chicken here. You could also use frozen as long as it's thawed out. And I'm going to take my chicken out and cut it up, but I'm going to go through it and cut all the fat pieces out and all the gristle. But don't throw away those little pieces that you cut off. You could put that in with all the scraps from the vegetables that we're going to do here, and just keep a bag in your freezer, and you can use that to make chicken broth. Okay, I'm dicing the chicken, and we're going to cook it. Usually it calls for uncooked chicken, but this is a soup, so we're going to cook it. So I'm just going to measure out the chicken. So I need 1.5 cups for a half a recipe. So what I thought I would do, they want you to cook the chicken, so I'm going to cook it in the chicken broth that I'm using for the soup. So I thought that would give it a little bit more flavor. And you could also use chicken thighs if you like a richer of a soup. But I'm just using chicken breast for an example, but you can use any kind of chicken as long as it's cooked. I'm also adding in some salt and pepper to taste. It doesn't give you an exact recipe. The recipe says to coarsely chop the celery, slice the carrots crosswise to 1/4 inch thick, and you're going to peel an onion and coarsely chop the onion too. I am very bad at chopping, so you're only going to get me chopping the celery. Okay, now we're going to add the chicken stock and all the vegetables and the chicken in the pot. I strained the chicken out and made sure I had the exact amount of broth, and then I added the chicken back in. Then I'm going to add in the vegetables, the celery, the carrots, and the onion. And this is optional, but you can also add bouillon cubes to the recipe. So now we'll bring it to a boil and then turn down the temperature and let it simmer for 30 minutes. All right, now it's time to can. All right, my jars are hot and ready, and my soup is ready to can. So let's go ahead and go to the next step. I've washed my lids and rings in hot soapy water. I'm putting my lids in warm water, but you don't have to do that. It's just something I used to do all the time. Not boiling water, just hot. I've got my jar lifter here and a paper towel to catch all the mess. Got my hot jars here. I'm going to take my lifter and take the water out very carefully. You don't want to get burned, and you're going to put it on your paper towel. I've used a bowl too, but I'm just going to use paper towel here. I have my funnel here and my debubbler, and I've washed everything in hot soapy water, so everything's clean. All right, so I'm going to get my funnel, put it on my hot jar, and I've got my ladle here, and I am going to put the soup in the jar. Now this soup was not meant to be a thick and hearty soup. This is meant to be like a base. You could eat it just like it is, or you could add noodles to it or rice. But this is just one recipe. There's plenty of recipes out there for chicken soup, but this is just a really easy one, especially for a beginner. All right, we're going to ladle it in the jar, and we're going to go to 1 inch headspace. That is about right there at the bottom of the lid. So I'm going to take my debubbler, and it also gives you the headspace. You want to make sure you get all the air bubbles out so you'll have a nice seal. So you want to do it several times, and just make sure that you use something that is not going to break your glass. A skewer works really well if you don't have all this equipment. And now we're going to check the headspace. Sometimes when you debubble, you lose a little bit of that liquid, but this one is perfect. So we're going to go ahead and clean off our lid and put our ring and lid on. I use a wet paper towel. Some people use vinegar, but I have never had any problems with just using a wet paper towel. All right, so now I'm going to put my lid on and put my ring on, and we're going to do it fingertip tight. You don't want to put it on there really tight. That could mess it up and make it not seal. So there we are. We've canned our first jar of chicken soup. And you're going to put it in your canner. Make sure you do not do a staging where you fill up all your jars at once. Please do not do that. That is not recommended. So I'm going to go ahead and start on the next jar. So same as before, take your hot jar and put your funnel on your jar, and just take your soup and put it in your jar. This is going to be a brothy soup, so you're not going to fill it up with the chicken. So you're going to do about 1/3 chicken and vegetables, and the rest is going to be broth. We're getting some snow and ice, so this soup is going to be perfect on a cold winter day. I am so ready for spring. So I'm just going to do the same thing I did before. Take all the air bubbles out, and I'm then going to check the headspace and see if we have enough headspace in there. It's 1 inch. That's perfect. I'm going to wipe off the rim of the jar. Then after you wipe the rim of the jar, put your lid and your ring on just like you did before. And this is not hard at all, y'all. You can do this. I know you can. Just follow these simple steps and you can can your own chicken soup. I promise you it's not scary. Okay, now we're going to close the lid, and my Presto has this V right here where you're going to line up the V's, and it has open and close. So I'm just going to shut that, and we're going to put this together, and that means it's closed. I'm trying to do it with one hand, so it's a little bit harder to do, but now you know that it's closed, and we can start with the next step. And your canner has a plug here to make sure that if it goes over pressure, that will pop out. This is the gauge, and this is going to show you how much pressure is in your canner. So that is very important. And you're going to need to know your elevation so you'll know what your pounds of pressure is going to be. I'm in North Carolina, so mine is going to be 10 pounds of pressure. So now I'm going to make sure it's all the way closed, and I'm going to turn up the heat. And you want to make sure that you know your sweet spot. So you can practice with just canning water. You don't have to go by any of the other things. Just put your water in your jars and start regulating your canner to your stove, and that's going to help out a lot. So once your canner starts to heat up, this is the vent pipe, and you want a steady stream of steam coming out of that for 10 minutes. So don't just set your timer if you see just a little bit, but make sure it's a steady stream of steam. Say that 3 times, and then we'll start our timer. All right, I've got my steady stream coming out, and I am going to set my timer for 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes is over, then we'll go to the next step. It's been 10 minutes, and I'm going to put my weight on. I am using a weight, and it's going to jiggle when it gets to 10 pounds. So what I'm going to do is wait until the gauge goes to 10, and then we'll start our timer, and then the weight will start jiggling, and that's how we know that we're at 10 pounds of pressure. All right, you hear that sound? It's at 10. And you can see the weight is starting to jiggle, so we know it is at 10 pounds of pressure. So it's going to jiggle a little bit more. You want to make sure it just maintains a good consistent rock, but you don't want it to go too crazy. So I'm going to let it go right about to here, and I want to keep it right at this temperature. So just make sure that you adjust your temp. And if you're using the regulator, you want to watch this and make sure you maintain that 10. And I'm going to turn it down just a hair, but you've got to make sure that you keep that at least 10 the whole time. If it goes under 10, you have to start all over again. So it's so important that you keep that at the same temperature. So make sure you're practicing right here. If you've never done it before, just put water in here and do the same thing I'm doing, but just practice with water, and you can get to where you know your stove and you know what it's supposed to be on, and it'll be a lot easier. But you can practice with water, but you want to just maintain that, and we'll go for 75 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes. I'm going to set my timer, and we'll come back in an hour and 15 minutes. All right, we did it, 75 minutes. So I'm going to turn off the stove, and I'm going to let this sit here. Do not disturb it until we are 0 pressure. That will come all the way down to 0, and that locking mechanism will hit the metal, and I can always listen for that and know that it's at 0 pressure. So do not touch it. Just leave it undisturbed until it comes down to 0. So now that locking mechanism is down to 0, so we're going to take the weight off, wait 5 minutes, and then we can take the lid off and wait 10 minutes. All right, y'all, it's showtime. We're going to take the lid off carefully. We're going to pull it back that way, and it is gonna have steam coming out. So you want to kind of open it up from the back. Let the steam come out the back instead of in the front in your face. And I automatically just take it and put it in the sink. And now we can take out our jars. And this is the best part, y'all. Look at all these jars. And I did can the chicken that I had left over. That is a tip. If you have two things that you can can at the same time with the same amount of times, all chicken is, or all meat is 75 minutes, 90 for quart. So you can absolutely do it in the same batch. So that's what I did. So I've got chicken and chicken soup. So lay you out a towel and put it somewhere where your jars are going to stay there undisturbed for at least 12 hours. And you don't want to have a draft. So I always set it right beside of my stove and make a place for it, because you don't want it to be touched for 12 to 24 hours. So I'm going to take out my jars carefully. Be gentle with them, because you don't want to affect the seal in any way. So I'm going to take these out, and as you can see, it's mainly broth, just a little bit of chicken, but you could also, like I said, put in the noodles or the rice, but you could also thicken this broth up and make a delicious chicken pie. I think that would be perfect with this. I'll also have the canning video below where I can chicken. It is so easy, and I think that is my #1 favorite thing to have on my shelf, because you can make so many different dishes with that canned chicken. So I will have that link below as all the other information that you'll need. And if you ever have a question about canning, you can always ask me and I will try to help. I waited a long time to can because I was scared, and I don't want anybody out there to be scared of this. It is really easy if you follow the directions, and I will happily answer any questions you have. Just let me know down below or in any of my videos, and I will surely help you any way that I can. So I'm going to press down on the lid on the lid to make sure that it's sealed. So everything is sealed. So I'm going to go ahead and take the rings off. And I also like to take the rings off and then press in the middle again just to make sure. And I'll also pull up on the lid to make sure that I have a tight seal. So after you do that, make sure everything's sealed. You'll just wash the jars and write the date that you canned them on the top, and you can store them on your shelf. They will go at least 12 to 18 months or even longer. So I promise you, it's not hard if you follow the rules, and I will help you any way I can. So I want to thank Jenny from Jenny's Scratch Made Kitchen and Beth from the Miller Life Kitchen for hosting. Go like and subscribe to their channels, and make sure you comment on all the videos in the playlist. I will have the link down below. When you comment on the channels, they're going to do a big giveaway and give away that canner. So I'll have all the information linked down below in the description box, and all the links you need to start out on your canning journey. I hope you have enjoyed this video and got something out of it. Hope y'all have a wonderful week, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Alright, first thing I did, I cleaned my beans. I put them in here and rinsed them off really good and looked through them, and I don't see anything. So now I'm going to put them in my pot, and I'm going to cover them with water. This is a pound of beans. I'm going to cover them with water and cover them with at least 2 inches of water. I'm just using bottled water. I don't like to use tap water, or if you have well water, I don't know if you would use that or not, but I like to just use bottled water. So I'm going to add 2 bottles. I added a little bit more of another one. And I like to measure. I don't have a ruler, so I'm going to see. This is 1 inch. The stairs are 1 inch, so that just barely covers that. So I need some more water. Probably at least 3 water bottles. All right. Covered with 2 inches of water. I'm going to turn my burner up to high, and I'm going to let this boil for 2 minutes, and then I'm going to take it off the heat and let it sit for 1 hour. Okay, it's boiled for 2 minutes. It doesn't say to cover it, so I'm just going to turn off the heat and let it sit for 1 hour. All right, they set for 1 hour. Now we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to put the beans back where we just drained them. We're going to put them back in the same pot. Do the same thing again. We're going to add enough water to cover them by 2 inches. And since they've
My grandson's not happy back there. Since they're puffed up, since they've soaked, you're probably gonna add more water than what you did before. So I'm gonna go ahead and add 3 water bottles, and we'll see where we're at. So that is just about 2 inches. So I might add just a little bit more water. Then we're gonna bring it up to a boil again. And we're going to, when it comes to a boil, we're gonna simmer this until the skins crack on the beans, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, the beans have started to split. It says starting to split, and that's when you take them out, and I reserve the liquid. You're gonna need that liquid later. So I put the beans in here, and then I'll add the rest of the ingredients. Okay, I've got 3 large onions that I've sliced. It said to 1/4 inches, so I just kind of cut them like this, cut them in half, and then they're in these 1/4 inch cuts. So it's really easy. So now I'm gonna add this to the baked beans, or just to the beans. I'm adding some salt pork. It says a 1/2 pound. This is only 3/4 of a pound. So I'm just adding half of it. That way I can save it for next time. This was over $6, so I really don't want to put a whole lot in here because I might make another batch. So I'm saving that one for the next batch if it's good. So I've got half of it cut up into 1/2 inch strips, and I'm going to add that to the onions and the beans. All right, y'all, I have got 2/3 cup brown sugar, 2 teaspoons salt, 2 teaspoons dry mustard, and 2/3 cup of molasses. I'm going to mix that up, and I'm going to add 4 cups of the liquid that I had from the beans that I reserved. So I'm just going to add that in. Now we're going to mix all those spices together with the 4 cups of reserved bean liquid. And we're going to stir this up, and we are going to put the oven on 350. All right, I'm going to cover it with foil. We've got my oven on 350, and I am going to cover it with foil, and I'm going to leave it in there for 3.5 hours. If you didn't have enough water for those 4 cups, you could, bean juice, you could use water, and I've got some left over, and it says to check on it every once in a while and add water if needed to keep the beans soupy while baking. That means you won't have a brick when you process your jars and you let them sit for a while, and then you go to get them and they're going to be just like a compressed brick. So you want to make sure they're soupy. All right, the finished product right here. I did add just a little bit of that excess bean juice that I had, and now it's ready to can. Look at it. It looks so good, and it smells amazing. All right, it says to ladle the beans and the sauce in the jar, and it says it makes 6 pints or 3 quarts. So I'm gonna put that in the jar. Sorry about that. 1 inch headspace. All right, we are going to get all the air bubbles out with our debubbler, and with the other side we're going to check our headspace, which is 1 inch. Perfect. Wipe the rim, and we're going to put our lid and ring on. All right, wipe the rim of the jar, put the lid on, lid and ring, fingertip tight, put it in the canner. This will go for an hour and 20 minutes, and the quarts will go in for an hour and 35 minutes. It only made 4 for me, and next time I will double the recipe if it's good. I can't wait to try it, but I did have some left over, so I will cook that later. But I'm gonna put the lid on here, and they're gonna go for an hour and 20 minutes. I used the ball lids, and 2 of mine did not seal, so I am gonna probably cook these Sunday. But I'm gonna put these in a bowl, and I'm gonna try them and see if they're worth making another batch. As you can see, it is good. I'm telling you, I'm gonna make this again. I think next time, instead of having those little pieces of pork all in it, I think I'm gonna cook it the 3.5 hours with the pork, and then I'm gonna discard it and just can it like that. But this is delicious. All right, we're gonna can some beef stew. I pulled this out of my freezer and let it defrost for a few days. it says stew meat, but you can use any kind of roast. And I had this in my freezer from the cow that we had gotten 1.5 years ago. So this is a beef bottom round roast, perfect for canning. And it is a little bit less than what the recipe says. This says 3.34 pounds. It says 4 to 5 pounds. There's just going to be less meat. You can go less, but don't go more. So you can't put more vegetables in here. You can do a little bit less, but don't do more, because that will throw off the recipe and it will not be safe. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this up, and then I will brown it in this pan. And then I have got carrots going. I'm trying to cut these up, and then I'll cut potatoes up, and I think celery too. That is the hardest thing about this recipe, is just cutting up all the vegetables. It takes time, but it's going to be worth it in another month or so when I take it off the shelf and I just dump it in a pot, make some biscuits or some cornbread, and I've got dinner ready. So I'm going to go ahead and get the meat cut up. You cut it into 1.5-inch squares, and we're going to brown it in this pan. And this is where we're going to cook we're going to put it all in the pan, and I'll show you the rest, but it's real easy. All right, I've got my beef cut up. I took as much fat as I could off of it. You're not going to be able to get it all, but get as much as you can. And now I'm browning it in 1 tablespoon of oil. It says vegetable oil, but all I had was grapeseed oil. So I am going to brown these in the pot. And now I'm going to measure out my carrots and start peeling my potatoes. All right, I have browned the meat. I've got my potatoes and my carrots in here that I've cut up. I will have a link to the recipe link down below. It's not my recipe, it's Ball, so I'm just going to link it instead of writing it out. But I'm going to add all this to my pot. I might have to get a bigger pot, because I don't know if this will all fit. But I'm going to put my potatoes and my carrots in there, and then I'll add everything else. All right, I think this pot will be big enough. I added in 3 cups of onion. The recipe calls for 3 cups of celery. Not a big fan of biting on a piece of cooked celery, but I added in a little bit over 1 cup just for the flavor. And like I said, you can add less but not more. So I didn't want to add more than 3 cups, or I didn't want to add 3 cups, so I can add less than 3 cups. I just can't add more than 3 cups. So now I am going to top this with some boiling water and add the spices. All right, I've got everything in here. I'm going to add 1.5 tablespoons of salt. I'm using canning salt, not pickling, or I'm using canning and pickling salt, not regular iodized salt. I'm going to add about 1 tablespoon, or whatever it says, of pepper. I'm not going to sit there and do it in a tablespoon or a teaspoon. I'm just going to do this until I get about how much I like it. The recipe also calls for thyme. I'm not putting that in. You can leave it out if you like, or you can add it, but I'm just leaving it out. I will season it more after it's cooked, and after I get it out of the jar and go to heat it up, then I can flavor it. You can add a little bit of seasonings, like maybe some onion powder, garlic powder, something like that, but just go lightly, because it intensifies the flavor when you can it. That's why I just like to leave it kind of a blank canvas, and I can season it up how I like it. Okay, the directions, it doesn't tell you how much. It just says pour boiling water to cover. So hopefully this is enough to cover, or I'll need to boil some more. So I'm going to boil that and pour it over my stew. And hopefully we will not need any more. And this is what I use. I use the drinking water. So I'm just going to put some more in here until it completely... Boil that till it completely covers the vegetables and the beef. All right, I got a little bit of water left, and now I'm bringing this to a boil, and then we'll start to can it. All right, I'm using the Presto 23, the large canner, and it says that I put 12 cups in here. So I've got 12 cups in here, and I've got my 7 jars, because it says it does 7 quarts or 14 pints. So I'm using quarts here. So I have got some water in here just to hold them down so they don't move around, but you will pour that water out, because I've already got 12 cups in here. I don't need to add any more water. So I'll just pour that out into my dishwater, and I'll have some hot water to wash my dishes with too. So I'm gonna let this simmer. Do not boil your jar. So we're gonna let this come up to temperature, and by that time the beef stew should be boiling and we'll be able to can it. All right, it came to a boil and now we're gonna start canning it. I've got a paper towel here to keep the drippings from getting everywhere, and I've got a bowl here too. All right, I'm gonna put my vegetables and my beef in the jars. Make sure you stir it up so you get your beef. Don't just get vegetables in there. It's called beef stew. So what I do is go ahead and have it about 3/4 full of the solids, and then just take a coffee cup and just pour the rest of the liquid over there. And that way it's a lot easier and a lot faster and a lot less messy. And also you're going to try and get it to 1 inch headspace. So I'm going to have to take some of this out. And it's very hot, so be careful. Take your debubbler and go ahead and just try and get all the bubbles out. You want to make sure you use something that is not metal so you don't break your jar. So just kind of pull it this way, pull it that way, put in the middle, and make sure you're getting all the air bubbles out. And it also gives you the headspace as well, so it's a double tool. So that's right at 1 inch. If you don't have one of these, it's right here at the rim. So now I'm going to take my paper towel, wet paper towel, and wipe off the rim. You don't want anything coming between the seal, because that might make it not seal, and you don't want that. After you go to all this trouble, you want to make sure every jar seals. And I have pretty good luck, knock on wood, about mine mostly sealing. So there you go. There's my first jar. Put it in there. So let's fill up the rest and then we'll come back. All right, I got my jars filled up. I'm gonna put my lid on and we'll get started. All right, y'all, my dishwasher came on, but they are done. And I'm putting them on a towel where there's no draft. And you're gonna let them sit there for somewhere where you will have them undisturbed for 12 to 24 hours. Check them in 12 hours. You can always reprocess if they don't seal. You'll have to get another jar, another lid, another ring. But you can reprocess them or put them in the fridge and they can sit in there for a day or two, and then you just eat them up. And they will boil in the jar for at least an hour or so. So that's how I can beef stew. All right, they're done. They've been here for about 12 hours, all have sealed. So I'm going to take the rings off. I'm going to wash them. I'm going to wash the jars and write beef stew and the date I canned them. And they're going to be good for at least a year. Probably for 18 months or longer than that. But they won't last that long for sure. So it's going to be a quick and easy dinner. I can dump that out, add some corn, add a salad, add some biscuits, some cornbread, and I've got a meal in just a few minutes. So that is how I can beef stew, and I hope you will make this recipe. It was really easy. I'm going to can some apple pie filling. So I've got some fresh fruit preserver from Mrs. Wages. I got that at Walmart. So I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of this, and I'm going to add some water to it. And that will keep the fruit from turning brown. Adding 8 cups of water, which is a half a gallon, to that 3 tablespoons of fruit preserver, and I'm going to stir that around. And it says to get 12 cups of sliced, peeled, cored apples and treat them in here. So I'm going to go ahead and start coring and peeling my apples, and I'll put them in this water. All right, those are my apples, the ones that we picked last weekend. I'm going to start working on those. I did have some that we bought a couple weeks ago, and they're pretty much not acceptable for canning. So I'm probably going to cut these up and freeze them, or do something, maybe apple pie filling for the freezer, because they're not acceptable for canning. But these are, and I got this tool that I'm going to
core them, and then I'll peel them, and then I'll cut them into slices. All right, I'm washing the apples, and I'm going to core them. And I'm going to show you this new tool that I got on Amazon. It looks like that pineapple core, but it's for apples. And you'll just take it and put it in the middle, and you'll just turn it. Turn it until it pops out of the back of the apple. Just pull it out like that. And it's got a lever here where you can pop it open and take out the core. It's really easy. So that's my new favorite. I'm adding in half of the apples in some boiling water, and I'm going to let them boil for 1 minute. All right, you're going to remove them with a slotted spoon, and I'm going to put them in a bowl, and I will cover it and let it you want to cover it to keep it warm, and then I'll do the other 6 cups of apple slices. I've got 2½ cups of sugar here. I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of clear gel. You want the clear cook type gel. You do not want the instant. And I am going to back off of it a little bit. I think I'm going to only use 2/4, which is 1/2, because I don't want mine really thick. You could also leave this out if you want, but don't use flour. You have to use the clear gel. You're going to add 1½ teaspoons of cinnamon. I'm going to kind of back off a little bit. I like cinnamon, okay, but not that much. Add 1¼ cup of cold water. I'm also going to add in 2½ cups of unsweetened apple juice. You want to turn this on medium heat, and you want to bring it to a boil, and you want to constantly stir it so it doesn't get any lumps in it. All right, it's getting thick and starting to boil, so I'm going to add 1/4 cup of lemon juice and bring that back to a boil and boil for 1 minute. All right, now we're going to add our apples and stir them in and get them heated through. All right, I have my hot jar here, and I am going to spoon the apples and the sauce in the jar. I usually use a funnel, but with a wide mouth jar, I really don't think you need it. If I have anything spill out, I always have this bowl here that I use. And the last time it was really thick, so I'm going to just spoon the sauce over the apples. I'm not going to fill it too full because it gets really thick. And I only used 1/2 a cup of that clear gel, and you can see how thick it is. So I don't want it to be too thick, so I'm going to add just another couple more apples. All right, it's about 1-inch head space, pretty close, so I'm going to get the air bubbles out, and then we'll check the head space then. This is really thick. I'm glad I only used 2, or I keep saying that because it said 3/4 cup. I only used 1/2 cup. So I'm right at 1-inch head space, and I've got my paper towel. Make sure that you wipe the rim because this is really thick, so you don't want to mess up your seal. So make sure that you get all that stuff off of the top, and it's got sugar in it, so you want to make sure you get it really nice and clean on there. Put my lid and my ring on there, fingertip tight, and we'll get all of the rest of the jars canned. Canned it for 25 minutes. Took it off the heat, took the lid off, and waited 5 minutes, and now we've got apple pie filling. This is going to be so good in an apple pie. Apple dumplings, apple crisp, apple cobbler. I cannot wait. And I wish I would have made a double batch after doing all that work. Should have just done a little bit more to each, or got a little bit more apples done and a little bit more of that filling and just done that double. But I know I'm gonna do more of this. It is apple season right now. I'm gonna go through these apples and make more of this. I'm gonna make some applesauce. I'm gonna can some apple slices, It is going to be so good. And I had leftovers too, so I enjoyed that and it was delicious. So that's how you can apple pie filling.